CBS Atlanta News is asking the tough questions after our hidden camera investigation exposed questionable tactics used by some heating companies to make money. We installed hidden cameras in a home to document the sales pitch.
It's just a matter of time before it gets stuck, and then you have problems.
But first we had our heater inspected by an expert at Staten Conditioned Air who has a complaint-free history with the Better Business Bureau.
Nothing obviously that needed to be replaced.
Then we called 4 companies to look at our heater. The result? We were upsold by 3 of the 4 companies we tested.
The gas will keep coming, and if the gas build up, you know what's going to happen, so we don't want that.
Barty Heating and Air upsold us $264 for a hot surface igniter our experts say we didn't need.
Would you have ever called the police if you knew this could have happened?
Oh, that's the one thing I would have done different today. I would not have called 911.
Andrew's parents, Lisa and Nick Messina,
who's my best friend,
are speaking out for the first time to tell what they say really happened to their son. Andrew was inside the house holding a gun and hit this pane of glass. Negotiators were standing here outside of the house behind this wall. In this GBI report, sniper Jason Yarborough said he heard a pop that sounded like a gunshot, and he observed Messina through his rifle scope, pointing the pistol at deputies. But there's one problem.
He pretty much had his back to the negotiation team when he was shot. How could he possibly have been threatening them?
The bullet came through this door. The autopsy report says Andrew was shot in the right side of his abdomen and the bullet came out the left side, which means he couldn't have been pointing the gun at negotiators behind him. And not a single shot was ever fired from Andrew's weapon.
Not a single officer out there, ever. Any of the report says that they saw the gun come through that hole where the break was.
What do you see?
Brian and Michelle Boland knew this would be the perfect house to raise their kids. The quirks that came with buying an older home, they planned to patch up with tender, loving care.
Everything looked fine.
Was there anything in the disclosure that gave you reason to believe there was a problem?
No.
The opposite.
The opposite.
The Bolands bought what they thought was their dream home, but soon learned the tilted floors, which they were told were just part of an old house settling, were signs of a much more disturbing problem.
He breaks the concrete and there's just absolutely nothing underneath it.
There was this canyon running through our basement. I couldn't believe it. How can you have a house sitting on top of nothing?
They're absolutely the best 2 cheerleaders in the state of Georgia, hands down. Everybody knows it. And they just so happen to now cheer at Johns Creek.
Shayla Moore and Angel Rice suddenly both showed up on the school's cheerleading squad this season.
It was done very quickly, very quietly, very quickly. It was very suspicious.
The odds of that happening are very slim.
Raising the concerns of other parents and competitors who question what perks made them move.
It is against the rules in college for us to pay athletes. It should be against the rule at a high school level to pay athletes, period.
Court records show Malcolm returned to the couple's home drunk one night. They began to fight, and what happened next is a matter of dispute.
We don't believe it was a self-defense situation.
Police say in the midst of the heated argument, Williams went to the kitchen. She grabbed a knife, walked back into the other room, and then stabbed her boyfriend in the arm.
The stab wound went through his forearm and just happened to hit the artery in his arm, and he subsequently bled to death.
She took a knife. She stabbed him. He died. Why isn't she guilty of murder?
She certainly isn't guilty of murder. She's justified in defending herself.
It only took the click of a mouse, and CBS Atlanta News was able to track down a phony ID mill out of China. They're duplicating nearly real driver's licenses in 20 states, including hard-to-replicate security features like holograms, ultraviolet images, and barcodes.
They look more real than mine, and I know mine's real.
The process was simple. Fill out a form, take a picture, and then we send $200 cash to China.
They send you a little trinket, and underneath that were the 2 fake IDs.
The IDs were smuggled through customs in this little box, disguised as a gift. We took our fake licenses to Georgia's Department of Driver Services.
It is a very good reproduction.
Director of Investigations Rick Miller and his team scanned the ID.
The presentation of the photograph, the signatures that are around the photograph itself and the placement, the hologram.
And they all said it was a good duplicate of a legitimate license.
It's not comforting to me.
It's a tactic that terrorist groups have used to live in the United States for years while they plot their attacks.
For Homeland Security, the issue is, can these IDs actually be used to create a real sort of base of operation or a kind of identity that then has, you know, months or years to, you know, kind of be established.
September 11th, 2001. You will remember this day as long as you live.
The 9/11 hijackers, for instance, lived in the U.S. and boarded planes that morning using fraudulently obtained state IDs.
Somebody who is going to be a potential hijacker, somebody like the 9/11 folks, get in the country, get access to a Georgia, a Tennessee, and Idaho driver's license, and they operate pretty much based on that identification without much problem.
It's a frightening thought, but very real concern, according to U.S. Senator Johnny Isakson.
As you and I sit here talking somewhere, maybe in the Middle East, maybe somewhere else, maybe even in our own country, there are those that would do us harm, trying to figure out some way to beat the system.
He was the baby. I miss him terribly.
The pain is raw 4 months after 3 Georgia boys lost their lives.
I went in his bedroom and I saw him kind of face down.
The tears shared among these families tell a horrible story.
He didn't answer the door when I knocked, and so I just decided to go in, and that's when I found him.
This is where we spend most of our time these days.
They're in shock, now speaking up to warn others of the dangers they say they were never told about.
You don't want to go through what we went through. There's too many kids dying out there.
14-year-old Ben Ellis was known for his beautiful smile.
And that's how I got now, is his pictures.
We got pictures, but we don't have our son.
His wisdom teeth were removed on December 7th of last year.
We had a Jell-O that night and a little bit of ice cream. And we just watched TV, you know, until bedtime.
But 16 hours later, Ben was dead.
I went in to get him up. And there he was, in the bed.
He was laying on his stomach and with his head on a pillow, and I rolled him on over, and, you know, and I knowed something was wrong.
It was a similar story for Lisa and Ronald Robinson.
That's the first thing they came out and said, no, the surgery went well.
Marcelius Robinson was born with cerebral palsy.
This is the laugh I'm talking about.
A joy, as his parents described him, whose life was cut short.
A family should be informed that there is a possibility that your child might not wake up.
3 days after Marcelius's surgery, his parents found him in his bed. His lips were blue. He was already dead.
And the blood was so dark when we were administering CPR. The blood and the stuff was coming out of him was almost as black as this cloth I got in my hand.
Gavin, they're going to put in a mental institution under lock and key until he is declared competent to stand trial. And then it could be 40 years, 50 years, and then he's got to serve the rest of his life.
Gavin's still in jail. He's a little difficult to deal with in the jail. He just needs a little bit more care than normal adult inmates do. So it just taxes the system all the way around. You know, much rather see these people get the mental health help that they need, because I've got a jail full of them.
It's the same fate Amisha Marani fears for her own son.
He received over 30 to 40 days out of school suspension, 30 days in school suspension. He ended up ultimately coming into possession of a stolen gun and flashing it on 3 children.
We met up with Carlos in his hometown of Gulfport, Mississippi. He said he wasn't even in Georgia at the time of the crime.
This is where I reside now, Gulfport, Mississippi. This is where I'm at. This is my home.
Fairley did the opposite of what a wanted criminal would do. He picked up the phone, called the police, and told them exactly where he was.